everybody, welcome to the channel. So what we're going to do today is I had a subscriber, it's been quite a while back actually, I want to apologize for this, asked me to do a video on all my cars. It took me a while to think of all of them because I couldn't remember them all. I think there's been like 37 total. I actually have a list here of all of them. I couldn't remember if I didn't make a list. And I tried to put them in the order I had them. This is going to be a two-part video. I'll probably post one part one day and the next because I don't want to make a 30-minute video just about the cars I had. So we'll post one day, one the next. Getting close to Christmas time. Actually, it's getting close to Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is next week. We've had our tree up for 2 weeks. We bought a new one. We went ahead and put it up. Thought I'd do this video in front of the tree because I don't know when I'm going to post it. So, you know, happy Thanksgiving or Merry Christmas, depending on when it goes up. So let's get on with the video anyway. I've been rambling on for a minute. My first vehicle I ever owned in my life was a 93 Nissan Stanza. I was pretty lucky. Maybe it's 92. It was 92 or 93. I can't remember. If I quit making them in 93, it was a 92. It was last year they made it. And I was fortunate enough that whenever, you know, I turned 16, my parents gave me a vehicle, and I hated that car. Man, I hated that car. It was square. If you'd ever seen one, look it up. It was square. It was ugly. It was four doors, but it had pretty low miles on it. Because my mom had bought it a couple years before, and she let me have hers, and she went out and bought a new car. And sorry about the sniffles. I've got a little bit of a cold because of the cold weather. She let me have it, and I was kind of envious of some of my friends because some of them had sports cars and, you know, SUVs and stuff like that. But what I wasn't smart enough to realize when I was 16 was their vehicles had tons of miles on them. Mine had low miles, so anytime we went anywhere, we had to take my vehicle. I couldn't appreciate that at that time, but I do appreciate that now, and thank you, Mom and Dad, for getting me that vehicle. But that was my first vehicle. Hated it. Wrecked that car so many times. It was awful. It was awful. I mean, I demolished that car, and it was so tough. It never would total it. They just kept on fixing it back. And I kept telling my friends eventually I was going to buy a new body style 300ZX. And they would all just kind of laugh at me because I'd had that car for a while, and that's probably one of the longest cars I'd owned. But when I went out and, you know, got into college and I was working, I've had a job since I was 16, but my parents wouldn't let me trade the car until after I got, you know, a little older. So once I got old enough and got out, you know, working a part-time job and got in college and turned 18, I sold that car and immediately went and bought a 1990 300ZX, pearl yellow. It was bright. It was a bright car, 5-speed. But oh, I loved that car. That was my dream car for the longest time. Loved that car. Got it. It had like 130-some thousand miles on it, but I loved it. It had a little bit of a vibration at like 60 mile an hour because I think the drive shaft was warped or something. It was kind of common in those vehicles. But other than that, loved that car. So I went to trade that in on a, I forget what year it was. It was like a 94 or 95 Toyota Supra. The guy at the lot, it was his wife's car, the owner of the lot. It was at a Chevrolet lot. Loved it. It was red, 6-speed manual. I think it was a 6-speed. May have been a 5-speed because it was a non-turbo. Can't remember that about that car, but I love the Supras, the new body style Supras. Came close to buying 2 of them. And the guy looked at me and I'm working where I work now. I didn't have any bills. I still lived at home, had a good job, a really good job. The guy looked at me and said, "You can't afford my car, get off my lot." He didn't even ask me who I was, didn't ask me where I worked, didn't ask me nothing about me. The car was like $24,000 at the time. It had just a little over 20,000 miles on it, and he basically kicked me off his lot, which made me mad. On the way home, I knew where a twin turbo 300ZX was with 522 horsepower on it. I immediately went and bought that car and took it back up there to show him that I could have afforded to buy his car. And the look on his face was pretty priceless when I pulled in that. And then when I left, it was really priceless because I left probably a lot quicker than I should have. But that car was amazing, 522 horsepower. It was ridiculous how fast that car was. It is amazing that I'm still alive today after owning that. Nuts. But I love that car. It was white, 5-speed manual. It was crazy. If it could be done to it, it about was. It was just stupid fast. All the parts off that car come from Stillen out in California. What they do out Stillen is they race Z cars, or did. I'm assuming they're still in business. It's been years since I talked to Dean, who I used to buy my parts from. But they fabricated a lot of stuff in their shop and stuff like that. Had 5-way adjustable Kikos, had full racing suspension, all the deletes on the cat and everything. It was just a beast. And I'm not going to say that I ever raced the car, and I'm definitely going to say that it never got outran in Mexico. Yeah, in Mexico, it never got outran. But back to the story. That was back in the day. Heck, now cars come out with 500 and some horsepower. That didn't happen back then. That was at the height of like the Fast and Furious Fast and Furious era, and man, it was awesome to own that car at that time. I drove that car to the movie to see the first one. Oh my God. I just wanted to drive 400 mile an hour when I got to that movie. It was crazy. But after on that, all good things come to an end. That's probably my favorite car. I've had favorite trucks, but that's my favorite car. I traded that in, or sold that, and bought a brand new, it was a 99 Nissan Frontier 4x4 extended cab. That truck was all right, had it 2 weeks. I needed the title to have my mom's name on it because my insurance was so expensive at that time that I didn't want her name on the loan. My credit was awesome. I didn't need her name on a loan. She didn't want her name on my loan. I've never been late for a loan payment, but for some odd reason she didn't want it on there, which is fine because I didn't want her on the loan. But he couldn't get that worked out, which is totally fine with me because shortly after I bought that truck, I found a BMW Z3 Roadster I wanted. So after 2 weeks, went back up there. He had to take the truck back because he guaranteed us he could do that, and he couldn't. So I got to drive that truck for 2 weeks for free and had to drive it back and forth to Morristown several times. So that truck had almost 3,000 miles on it when I gave it back to him. Definitely wasn't a new truck, but he shouldn't have promised something he couldn't make good on. So I traded it for a BMW Z3 Roadster, and it was a 96. Sometimes I have to look at the what year it is too. It was a nice little car. I'm not going to lie. It was a nice car. It was silver with a red interior, 5-speed manual, but it was the 4-cylinder version, so it wasn't that fast. The suspension was actually better than what the motor could handle. But it was still a fun little car, but I'm 6'3". I was like a sardine in that little thing, man, with the top up. I was just cramped in with the top down. I could sprawl out. We was all good to go with the top up. It was a bad day. Can't ride the top down all the time. In Tennessee, it gets cold sometimes and it rains. So we had to get rid of that. Traded that for a 96 Acura Integra. This is the first Integra I ever owned. It was a GS. It was maroon with black leather interior, and it was also a 5-speed. My first car was an automatic. Everything after that up until now, all 5-speeds. So I enjoyed that little car. Had it for a little while. Wasn't fast enough. I still like speed. I still like speed now. That's not a good thing. I don't have anything that's that fast. My wife has an SI Civic. We'll get to that in the next video. But as of me, I don't really have anything that's that fast. So I wanted something a little quicker. So I traded that for a 96 Honda Prelude VTEC. And that was a nice little car. I enjoyed it. It was black with black leather interior. And it run really, really well. I'm not going to lie. It was pretty quick for a 4-cylinder with a VTEC. Probably one of the quicker VTECs I've ever owned, except for my GSR Integra. And we'll get to that later on. But then again, got tired of it. But before I got tired of it, this is where I started having more than one vehicle. I had a Dodge Colt that I drove back and forth to work. That thing was a pile of junk. I'm not even going to lie. It was awful. A little hatchback. It was awful. So I didn't have that long. Sold it for $75 to my buddy. He drove it home. 75 bucks. Took it. Went with it. After that, I bought a B2000 Mazda off my grandfather, who's no longer here. My other buddy also needed a vehicle. I sold it to him for like $1,000. I would like to have that truck back now that my grandfather has passed away, but it is what it is. I'd already sold it before that happened. I didn't have the foresight to see that I would like to have that vehicle, and it's gone now, so that's okay. We've learned to live with that. So after we got rid of that, we bought a Jeep Wrangler, a 1990 model Jeep Wrangler. That thing was rusted out. God, the frame of that thing was rusted like crazy. So I wound up selling that to a guy that restores Jeeps. He crawled up underneath it, looked at it, said he could fix it. I told him how bad it was. He's seen how bad it was. He even drove it. He wound up junking it out. He couldn't fix it. Wasn't my fault. I told him. He looked at it, inspected it. He bought it. I don't feel bad about it because he should have took the warning. After I got rid of that, I bought another Jeep, but it was a Cherokee Limited, one of the square bodies. Even to this point, the Cherokee Limited wasn't my primary vehicle. That was kind of like my secondary vehicle. It was a 99, but it had pretty low miles on it. And I'm not sure if it didn't become a primary vehicle after I got rid of the Prelude. Because after I got rid of the Prelude, I got a, what year was that I got? I got a Nissan, it was a Pathfinder, and for the life of me, I can't remember what year it was. I want to say it was like a 99 or something like that, Nissan Pathfinder. It was a good vehicle. I really liked that vehicle. One of my buddies wanted it again, offered me the same amount I paid for it like 2 years after I owned it, and I really hadn't done much to it other than put a set of wheels and tires on it and drove it 30,000 miles. So of course I'm going to sell it, and that's when I got the Cherokee. I forgot to write the Nissan Pathfinder down here. I really liked the Pathfinder at the time. It had a lot of room. It was my first SUV. Then whenever I got the Cherokee was a lot smaller. It was a lot smaller. It didn't feel like it was as good a quality either. The Pathfinder felt like a sturdier vehicle than the Cherokee did. I don't know, it may not have been. A lot of people take Cherokees. I got a buddy that beats a Cherokee to death and it just keeps on running. So, you know, maybe. But after I got rid of the Cherokee, I traded the Cherokee into one of my other buddies who wanted it for a Nissan 4Runner. Loved that 4Runner. That 4Runner was awesome. My wife blew the engine in it before we got married. Yeah, blew the engine. She was at work. I guess it wasn't her fault. I'd changed the oil in it a few days before, so I know it had oil in it. She was on her way to work. She pulled in the parking lot, said she heard a big, loud bang. I went up there to check what it was. There was a hole in the block big enough to about stick your fist through. Toasted. So, had to find a new engine, put in a 4Runner. Had a buddy of mine put the engine in a 4Runner. Like 2 days later, I took it to the beach. I would never do that now. There's no way I would put an engine from a junkyard in a vehicle and drive it to the beach 2 days later. But I was young then, didn't care. It made it to the beach, made it home. Lucky me, I guess. But I would have definitely had to drove it a little bit longer. As long as the engine's been the exterior, if you follow the channel, I would still not take that exterior to the beach right now. I would want to drive it even more. Which it has an antifreeze leak right now anyway. God, I hope it's not another head gasket. I'll update you on that later. But after that, I traded the 4Runner in to yet another buddy. Had a lot of friends that liked my vehicles. And I traded it in, and now the 4Runner had like 150,000 miles on it. This guy really wanted it. He had a Toyota Tacoma with about 30,000 miles on it. Of course, it was a base Tacoma, regular cab, 5-speed, crank windows. It was a 4x4, but there was no frills to it. Trade him even for that 4Runner with 150,000 miles on it for the Tacoma with 30,000 miles on it. Let that sink in. And the 4Runner was a 98, and the Tacoma was an 03. Who wouldn't do that? I mean, seriously, who would not do that? But yet again, the Tacoma was a little small for me. So I traded it in for a Nissan Frontier. It was an 02, and it was a crew cab 4-door, 5-speed manual. I love 5-speed cars. I still like 5 speeds, but in big trucks and SUVs, I do prefer automatics. My Pathfinder, Cherokee, 4Runner, all those were automatics. So I traded in for the Frontier, and the Frontier was a really nice vehicle. It only had like 23,000 miles on it. It had real low miles. Looked awesome. I didn't even look up underneath it. Always look underneath the vehicle. Always. I got it home, parked it. A few days later, I backed out and noticed this big piece of rust laying there. The vehicle had come from the ocean, or not the ocean, but from the coast. All that salt water and salt air and everything had ate that frame up, and it didn't eat none of the rest of the body up. The body looked awesome, real low miles. I didn't think anything about it. Learned a valuable lesson here. The frame was just falling apart. I mean, it was just the pieces of rust was just falling off of it. So that's when I traded in for the Nissan Xterra. I still have the Xterra today, but there's a story behind that. We've been in this video for 15 minutes now. This is where I'm going to cut it off. I'm not going to bore y'all anymore with the rest of my story just yet. We'll put the rest of the story up tomorrow. Hope y'all enjoyed the first half of this video. I've owned a lot of vehicles, gave you a little back history of them and why I got rid of them, and and why I bought them. So I hope you enjoyed that a little bit. Stay tuned till tomorrow for the rest of the 37 cars that I've owned. Please hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. We'll see you next time.